Hey, hello, you people. This is Jean with another episode of The Place, a little bit later than usual. And I had some technical difficulties that happens a lot lately, I think. But anyhow, we're here right now and doing The Place. Normally, that is at 12 o'clock, on Dallas time. But today we're a little bit later. We're not on Zoom either. But that's okay, right? We'll do that maybe in another day. If you are the first time here with me here at the place here on Facebook or on YouTube, then we are every week, and to make more connections, hopefully give you more answers and definitely to help you to be more and to do more, so to speak. Right? And today we are going to talk about the Enneagram. If there's one question that I get over and over again, then it is, Jean, can you tell me what the Enneagram is? And, of course, if I'm an Enneagram coach, or at least I don't call myself an Enneagram coach, but I used Enneagram a lot in my coaching practice. So I would love to answer that question and give a little bit more clarity what the Enneagram is and maybe also what it is not, so to speak, right? Because in a world full of outside influences, it is actually sometimes really hard to know who you are and what makes you you. Right? BuzzFeeds and astrology and what have you not, they might want to convince you that food or the way, you look at the stars actually can help you to understand who you are. But I think the Enneagram is a better option for you to do that, right? Once again, my name is Sean Dorf, and I'm here with you at the place. If this is the first time that you see me here, subscribe here on YouTube, and if you follow me on Facebook, then you would do us a great pleasure if you follow us here at the place. So, without further ado, let's talk about what the Enneagram is. First and foremost, I think the Enneagram is just a personal typing or a typology kind of system. And there are many of them. You have Myers-Briggs, which is a very well-known typology system in business. You have dynamics. That's something that I use too. You have love languages, and you of course have astrology. There are numerous one, and since I don't know all of them, I cannot give a judgment which one are good and not. Well, the ones that I know, of course, I can do. I use Myers-Briggs myself too, but that's basically what it is. It's nothing more than another, just a really good one, system of typology. Does that make sense? And I think in that sense, from what I know, it's actually different than most of it, right? Than most of that I know. It's not so fixed, it uses with a lot of variables. It doesn't pretend that it can predict the future or something like that. It just helps you with a couple of things. I made a little, overview of what it is. So first of all, it's a personality typing system, and it helps you to better understand yourself, and if you know other people, and other people as well. And we all know other people, right? It reveals our own behavioral and decision making and motivational patterns, right? Some people use the Enneagram for the next point a lot, is to find your authentic self a little bit more. Whether you want to go there or not, that's entirely up to you. But what you can use it for, definitely, you can use it for all these things, by the way, is for your personal growth. Right? It's a really good tool, and it's nothing more than that. It's like any tool. It depends on how you use the tool. The tool in itself, in this case, in particular, is not per definition wrong or not wrong, right? I have just about two left hands if it comes to fixing stuff in the house. So you can give me the best brands of tools. It doesn't make me better in fixing stuff in the house. Does that make sense? It's always about how you use the tool, right? Now, if it comes to Enneagram, you can get quickly lost in what it is. There are 9 types, and there are wings, and you have, triads, and people use all these words as if, if you're the first time, you get to know the Enneagram, she's so either impressed or so quickly confused. So let me immediately confuse you. That's kind of a fun thing to do, right? So there are 9 interconnected personality types. Um, and then, so that means that none of the types in itself stands on their own. Does that make sense? There are 9 types, but they're all interconnected. And so you have some of all these 9 types. Some you have just a dominant type. Does that make sense? Then the 9 types, they can be divided in 3 different what we call triads. So we make 3, group them together by 3: the 8, the 9, and the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4, and the 5, the 6, and the 7. And we call these triads the head, the body, and the gut triad. So for instance, the 5, 6, and 7, that's the head triad. So are you getting confused already? That's exactly the point, right? And it's really good to know that at some point in time, but in the beginning, maybe not. Let's start only with those number 9s. Now, to make it even more confusing for you, right? And all these types, they also have wings, and that means they take something from their neighbor number. So if you're number 1, your neighbor is a 9 and a 2, so you have a little bit of a 2 and a 9 as well. And then you also have a number that you typically go to, default to, if it doesn't go so well in your life at the moment, or you are a little bit in a more challenging mood. And then when you are a little bit less challenging mood and you're on top of your game, you take a little bit from another number as well, which we call an up or a downstream. So I hope you are really confused by now, but still stick with me in this video, right? It looks like this, right? So it can get confusing pretty quickly. Like I said, there are 9 numbers, go around. I always have to think about it, how to do that. But you go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 different types, right? It's not a labeling system, by the way. We come back onto that later. Every type has 2 wings. In the case of the 9, you have an 8 and a 1. In the case of the 1, in my example here, your wings are a 9 and a 2. And then you also belong to a triad. Now let's stick with the number 1. It belongs in the triad of 8 and 9. And by now, I am sure I already lost you completely, unless you already know a lot about the Enneagram and then say, no, Jean, you should not explain this like this. I know that you should not explain it like this, but this is sometimes how it comes across. And then we either don't use it at all, or we use it in the wrong way and only talk about these number 1s through 9, and it feels like a labeling system. So this is what I think you should do. Yeah. If this is your first time when you are encountering the Enneagram and you're interested in it, right? Start just first looking up about what it is about these 9 numbers, and I'll give you a couple of pointers there too. And then your next step, in my opinion, would be start to read about the wings. And that's a little bit easy to understand. So I am a number 7 on the Enneagram. So my wing numbers are a 6 and an 8. So I take at times a little bit from the other numbers as well. The reason why I tell you this is also, this already tells you that the combination of these things become already a lot. And that's the point. Everyone is unique. You cannot read in any Enneagram book, there's not a single Enneagram coach that can tell you who you are. They can help you if it's a good coach to who understand who you are or who you might be. Does that make sense? In my belief, it is never okay to say, hey, I am a number 2 and therefore I need to behave so and so. Does that make sense? What we did with the Enneagram, and by the way, it's a system that's really old, but what we did, in the recent years is just looking at groups of people and saying, hey, there are a lot of commonalities. And therefore they are number 1s. Now you might immediately think that's wrong, Sean. You should never do that. You yourself, made a while ago a video about labeling, so that's wrong. We do it all the time, right? I am from the Netherlands, so we talk about Dutch people. Dutch people are typically a little bit, direct. They have a typical sense of humor, right? And sometimes are actually seen as pretty rude. Okay, so that's labels. That's what we do. It's a generalization what we do. And, to some extent, that's kind of fun. And to some extent, it actually makes a lot of sense too. The Dutch people, we all speak Dutch, right? That's why we are Dutch people. Does that make sense? In the Netherlands, we all drive on the right side of the road. That is what you do in the Netherlands. So there's a lot of commonalities in that country that connects us to something that's culturally driven, that is driven by the way the country is constructed. That's a little bit what this is too. you know so you have like the land of the number ones. We have things that are the same. That doesn't mean that we are exactly the same. Does that make sense? And that's how you can use it. So if I did a lot of international work. I traveled literally all over the world and visit most, well, I don't know, but I visit a lot of countries, right? And there are just differences between French people and people from Sweden. So we sometimes say that is so typically French, and we do that with a sense of humor, but we also do that to understand each other better. If you say to a German person, and a German person asked me as an American, I turned American, right? And he said, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" Then we say, "Yeah, we're awesome, we're great, we're fantastic." A lot of German people don't like that. They say, "Wow, that's so over the top." But if we ask a German person, "How are you?" They say, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then most of the time, we as Americans are like, "Oh my gosh, is this person, terribly ill or something?" He's just fine. It's just a different perspective they had, and therefore we react sometimes different. And we always react from the upbringing and the culture that we have. The Enneagram can help you with that. Does that make any sense? I hope it does. Right. Next slide. Like I said, we have 9 different types. And before we go one step further, you can think about it like this. If it's just an introductory film that I'm making right here. But to read those numbers, you also have to understand that all human beings are basically motivated by the same things, right? Basically motivated. And there are only two. Okay, Sean, now you're going to make this really simple. Well, go with me for a little bit. We either are driven by the desires that we have. What do we want from life? What do we want to have in life? And or we are driven by the fears that we have in life. We don't want to have this, or we don't do that. And you think, hey, maybe that's a little bit, okay. So I am driven. If I'm driven too much by my fear, by not wanting to be alone, I might connect with everyone that I come across. And that's not a good thing. And that's sometimes the reason why we end up in unhealthy relationships, because the fear of being alone is too big. But if you are driven by really making rich connection, that's coming from the same point. Do you see that? It's just looking at it through slightly. So are you driven by deep, connections that you want to make? And some Enneagram numbers, they have that. You either are, if you don't do so well in that same spot, you are driven by fear, and if you do better in that same spot, then you do that. Same thing about finance. If you're driven a lot by fear, you tend to save a lot of money and maybe do a lot of insurances, and that's a good thing, but you could take that too far. If you're only driven by desires, you might take a lot of risky investments. So on all the topics in life, you can almost see that those things are always there. And is it always the balance in the middle? I don't think that the balance is always in the middle. Sometimes it's just, doing the right thing and leave the not so good thing behind. But it is always driven by desire and fear. And I know that's an oversimplification of things, but it helps you to read the Enneagram, because every number tells you a little bit what their basic desire and basic fear is. And you probably recognize yourself in them if that is you. Yeah, that's what we will see. There's a third factor. Some people are very big on that. I'm just not doing that in this video, but I will do other videos on that. Is that there is this thing in there that we believe that, and we, it's just me in this case, that we all have a natural gift, or we have a divine essence quality, and it's unique to us. And so it's not like the number ones have all the same divine essence quality, but we have a divine essence quality that is in the same area. Does that make sense? This is the reason why some religious group actually don't like the Enneagram, because they believe you cannot talk about your natural or your divine essence gift, because that can only come from God. God, no one that uses the Enneagram says that we can replace God. I just want to say that, but I'll make some videos on that too. Right? So instead of trying to remember what our divine essence or quality or natural gift is, we often in life let our ego get the better part of us, and then we are stronger driven by those desires and fears. And that's a little bit where the Enneagram, in essence, is going to help you with to understand that, right? Okay, so let me give you, because now you're wondering, like, what are those 9 types? What are those 9 types? We want to know about it, right? So, what are those 9 types, right? I make a very quick overview. By no means this is a course for you to understand, but I hope it kind of tantalizes your curiosity what this Enneagram is all about, right? Let's go with number 1, who has the illusory name of the Perfectionist, and it's so well chosen. But there are many more names that you could give the Perfectionist, but most of the theories around Enneagram will give the number 1 the name the Perfectionist, and if the name is different, they all point to the same thing, right? So the Perfectionist, their focus of attention is whether things are right or wrong, and doing the right things or wrong things, and noticing, correcting errors, and working hard in improving those things. So they have a drive that they believe perfection does exist. And if you take that too far, I don't have to tell you, how destructive that sometimes can be. If someone believes that perfection does exist, we have to accept that it doesn't. And specifically for the perfectionist, that's a harder thing to do. We often learn so much from our failures, don't we? That's true for you, that's true for me, and from our mistakes. For a perfectionist, that is sometimes really hard to accept that they make mistakes. That's typically the way a perfectionist behave. Now, they can, because they are perfectionists, produce really beautiful things in life as well. They sometimes are a little bit too hard for themselves, and believe me, most perfectionists are harder for themselves than they are for other people. So that is your perfectionist, right? Your number 2 is the helper, right? And you find, for instance, a lot of people in the service industry, like nurses and so on, you find them being a helper. Isn't that remarkable? It's not that I handed out number 2s and then say you need to become a nurse. No, if you do that research, you will find out that not everyone, but a lot of nurses and people in the service industry, they are helpers, and thank God that they are there, right? Specifically about the recent things that we are going through, right? What helpers typically want to do, they want to create rapport and connection with people, and they usually are a little bit afraid to ask what they need for themselves, because they are a little bit more focused on the need of other people. Now, they can sometimes take that a little bit too far, that they only help someone else to get something back themselves, mostly attention and connection. And then the drive becomes a little bit less altruistic, but in hate, the helper, very altruistic people, very quickly focused, and most sometimes only focus on helping other people. It just comes out sometimes in a distorted way, and therefore what they want to get. And so the fear of being alone and not getting connection is for a helper really almost unbearable, and therefore they start to do things for other people only to get some attention back. And it could feel very suffocating for the other person, and also not very nice. But that's a little bit where it's coming from. I think it's a beautiful number. By the way, all numbers are beautiful, but the helper is a very beautiful number. All right, number 3, and that is called the performer, right? And the performers, they tend to view the world really in terms and tasks and goals and achieving success, and their focus is really on that. And they're also focused on how the outside world is perceiving them. Are they perceived as being successful? It's really important for number 3, most of them, to get the acknowledgement and the accolades that come with these things, right? So if that goes too far, then you only do that. Number 3s that do that, they only do it for the accolades and the acknowledgments, right? That's not so good thing. But in itself, the drivers, the high achievers, you can often find them. Their salespeople often are very good. They're often a number three. You will find them there. They also call the achievers often as well, right? We go to number four, the romantic, and the romantic, and they have an artistic, very good feel for artistic and aesthetic values, and therefore they often become artists. They value authenticity really well, and they typically are very comfortable with a really wide range of emotions. They like to talk about emotions, and so they deal better with pain. They feel that's just part of it, and but because they live their lives through this feeling so much, it can be a little bit too much at times, right? And they over identify emotions often very well. So that can, for other people, be a little bit too much, and see the romantic a little bit naive and running their life only through their feelings and emotion, which is not true, but that's the way it comes out at times, right? The romantic, very beautiful number as well, right? Number five, that's the observer. Those are the people that we, from Myers-Briggs, often call the introverts. They're very intellectual, and they want to make sense out of the world by knowing a lot. So you find a lot of PhD and doctors, academics in the number five. That is seriously true. You can actually, do that and read that yourself. So they typically want to make sense of the world by researching and doing that, and they create they have their boundaries. This is they typically have a very small but strong circle, very introverted driven, rather stay at home and read about it in a book than maybe experience life the way life to some extent also was intended to be. So that's where the challenge of your number five is, right? The number six is what I call the loyal skeptic, right? And they have a little bit of a rebellious streak in themselves, right? And they challenge about everything. They challenge definitely rules and laws and all that kind of stuff. So people who are a little bit, challenged in this situation have a tendency to believe conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff. But they are critical, and so you will find journalists in the skeptic. You will find certain type of lawyers. Definitely, if it comes to human rights lawyers, you find them here. Activists are often number six as well. I'm a number seven, so I have a little bit of that in me as well. So it could go both ways. It's good that we have that we have those people in the world. I would say, and I think it's beautiful that we have all the numbers. There is no one number better than the other. Yeah, the number seven is the enthusiast. I'm a number seven, as far as I know, and I tell you a little bit later how you can find your number. And they are very energetic people, right? Even in times when it doesn't go so well, for a lot of people say, "Well, I think he's still doing well because he is so enthusiastic." So recently, a couple of things in my family happened, and I felt truly down. But if I go outside, I can still put out that same emotion and that same energy that I always have most of the time. So, but number seven, because of that, have a little bit, the risk that they run themselves into the ground, because that's the way they run their life, right? They're very enthusiastic about everything, very quickly distracted by shiny objects. One thing that you see in a number seven's house is, for instance, they have a lot of books, but they never finish. Well, never is maybe a little bit an over exaggeration. They never finish reading the book. They read a few pages in the beginning, some in the middle, and then the back cover and say, "Yeah, I know it. I read the book." Right? A number one or a number six would never have that. Right? They will finish the book. By the way, so you can see I'm a little bit connected to number one. I don't have that so much. I finish my book, but on the token of compare that to number six and number one, who always finish their books, I have that specifically. Number one would do that, right? So that's a good example how you can compare these things and have a little bit fun with it, right? But anyhow, number seven, called the adventurer or the enthusiast, fun-loving people, and we are a little bit more in our head too much, although it feels like they are very emotional, but kind of, they could be could be a little bit aloof at some point in time. Yeah, at some point in time. Number 8, the protector. You know, it's a powerhouse, right? A lot of the leaders and CEOs, they are typically number good leaders are there. You know, they run their life by power, and they are, you know, they are prone to go to strength. They believe in human strength. We have to push through it. They are not shy of conflict and confrontation, and they deal with that actually pretty well. But at least in their opinion, they say, you know, healthy conflict, that's a good thing. That's a typically saying that a number 8 would say. Unfortunately, we also see a lot of bullies in this area as well, right? So, and we see a little bit anger management problem in with the number 8 as well, right? So, you know, again, I'm simplifying it a little bit here for the reason of this just short introduction, and that brings us by the number 9, the mediator, and the mediator is beautiful, and it's hard to sometimes see who is a number 9 because they take a little bit of everyone else because they drive their lives because harmony. They can't stand conflict, and therefore they are really good in mediating conflict. So you will find, you know, judges and all that kind of people. You will find them here. I think my mom was a number 9. She wants to, she can't stand, she's really hurt by if there are people having an argument or things like that, right? Um, and they are really motivated by reducing conflict. Number 9, I think my dad was number 8, who actually drives conflict because he thinks it's healthy, can sometimes, although they are wings, can sometimes really conflicting in one way. And if we go deeper in those triads, then you understand why they belong to the same group. But for now, that's where I want to actually stay with it, right? Number 9 is very easygoing people, you know, and their focus is getting along with other people, right? That's, you know, that's their whole drive, right? Some people say if you talk about celebrities having numbers, then maybe Jesus was a number 9, I don't know, and the Buddha, who knows, right? Anyhow, those are the things. Number 9s have, that bridge me automatically to the next topic. Number 9s have typically a little bit harder tendency to identify themselves, what number they are. And identifying yourself as what number are you? Are you number 9? Are you number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4? What have you not? It's not so easy. So my first advice is, you know, read about it. And in the beginning, when you read about it, you think, oh yeah, I'm reading about a perfectionist. Oh, that's so me. And then you read about the helper. Oh yeah, yeah, that's also me. And you will find that there are about 4 or 5 things that you can recognize yourself in. But read about it more, and you will see one of those will, or two, maybe at most, will drive a little bit more to the top. So, and because you have, of course, a little bit from every number. No one is 100% a number 7 or 100% number 1. Does that make sense? Right? Read about it. Now, that's the best way to do it. And then you can have a conversation with someone else about it too. Well, don't let the other one tell you, oh, I think you're number 2. But you learn yourself best by talking to other people who you are, right? I mean, I did that like 2 weeks ago in the place here. That's an important thing to do. Do you see how these things connect? So just write down what people say about you. What is your mom saying about you? What is your dad saying about you? What are your friends saying about you? You get a better view of yourself by listening to other people, what they think of you, than only standing in front of the mirror, which we talked about last week, you know, and think that you then can figure out who you are. You get not the right view of yourself. You need to do both, right? But what other people say, at least the people that you value, is important as well. I think that is the most important step to do for you to discover what Enneagram type you are. Now, if you don't have the patience to do that, you can always take a test. If you take a test, be a little bit careful, right? If there is the 30 seconds Enneagram test, hmm, You can ask yourself, oh, so you think you can know me with a test of 30 seconds? If I would do that to you, you would say, yeah, there's no way you can know me through this test. So don't do that to yourself either. But there are some really good tests out there. And in the notes, in the comments, on Facebook and YouTube, I will put the link in there of a few tests that I at least have good experience with. Some are for free and some you have to pay a small fee for, right? And the one on the top you have to pay for, but that's the one that I trust the most. And it's an indication, it's a good start of what Enneagram type you be. Yeah, I always think it's very beautiful when you discover your true type. So even if the test says it, it could bring you to a slightly different direction. By the way, if you look at my test, then it says, maybe X% is 7, but you also have 2 or 3 close by things, and sometimes those are happen to be your wings, but sometimes not at all. And so the test, you need to know how to read those tests. If you want me to help you with that, then just send me a message, and I will give you a good direction with that too. And that brings us to the end of this presentation, right? Let me repeat really quickly why it is so beautiful to find your Enneagram type. Well, it creates an awareness of your own and other people's behavioral patterns and your motivations. And so then you have choices to make, right? And once you are in a position of making choices, that's a good place to be, because then you can alter the direction of your life if that is necessary. It increases your consciousness, and I have seen most people becoming more and more confident about who they are without changing anything, because they understand themselves better, right? And it enables, a cleaning of emotional issues. It helps you to work through stuff, so to speak, right? And it definitely increases compassion for yourself, but more important, it increases compassion for other people, and which I think is we all should do things around in that area. And if you're a little bit driven by it, it definitely increases your motivation and your productivity. You want to get more out of life, be more and do more. Enneagram is definitely one of the things you want to look at. I use this as a coach. It's not the end all of all things. It's just a modality. It's a good tool. It just happened to be a really, really good tool. Yeah, this was the Enneagram explained. If you really like what I did here, then subscribe me or follow me. And what if you not? If not, then I will see you in the next episode of The Place. Bye bye.